Hey everyone, and welcome to this edition of Just Parlays. I'm Jim Williams, your host, and joining me, the one, the only, Chris King. Chris, good to have you aboard. Crazy stuff going on in college football again. Yesterday, we talked about Lincoln Riley and his move to USC, and today, it's the Irish. How many people walk away from the Notre Dame job to take another job? But in this case, Chip Kelly is heading down to Baton Rouge, where he will do his work along the sidelines for the Bengal Tigers down there in Death Valley. Should be a lot of interesting fun down there.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think about it. Like you said, who walks away from Notre Dame? Kelly was on his way to putting himself on probably the Mount Rushmore of Notre Dame coaches next to Knute Rockne and Eric Parsegian and Lou Holtz. I guess the difference was those guys won national titles and he hadn't gotten there yet. But now think about this. You leave less than a week before you have a chance at getting that team back into the college football playoff, because depending on what breaks on Saturday on the conference title games, if Cincinnati loses to Houston or, Oklahoma State goes down or something like that, or if Michigan loses, you could see Notre Dame back in the college football playoff, but they won't have their coach.
Yeah, the other thing is that I've been told by a number of people I spoke to over the past couple days that Luke Fickell is likely to get that job at Notre Dame.
Well, that'd be interesting, because that would be another domino fall, because look at what Luke Fickell's done with Cincinnati since leaving Ohio State.
Look at the history of Notre Dame and Cincinnati. I mean, that Jerry Moeller they took out of Jerry Faust they took out of Moeller High School there. And then, of course, that's where Kelly came from. Brian originally came from the University of Cincinnati. So there's been a pipeline driving back and forth between Cincinnati and South Bend for a while now. So,
but if you're Kelly, what's the big draw here? Is it going to the SEC and being part of that conference where you've got to deal with Nick Saban, you've got to deal with Kirby Smart? Why leave Notre Dame now?
I'd have to say he's leaving because of the money. I mean, because LSU is paying an amazing amount of money. He probably looked at it and said, well, Les Miles won a national championship there. And so did Ed Orgeron. If they can win national championships, I can. The other thing is that Brian Kelly, like all coaches, has an ego. And I think
this is true.
He felt, for some reason, it's not getting done here, and I'm going to move on. Lou Holtz, back when he was coaching at Notre Dame, Holtz's theory of the case was that Notre Dame, because of its academic situation, hurt his recruiting, because there were some guys that he took that may or may not have qualified necessarily to be part of the Irish, when it came to academics. So that was his theory of the case, and the reason he, was let go was that he wanted to bend academically the rules a little bit. He made that. It wasn't like he made that, hit it. He made that a very interesting point. And so, that was part of it. I think maybe Brian Kelly thinks, okay, if I get a little bit more looser situation, which I'm going to get at LSU, then maybe I'm going to do it. But again, it's hard to turn down $100 million, which, by the way, could actually be more with incentives.
But I mean, the catch is, you're going from the ACC. Well, I mean, they're not even in the ACC. They're in there for basketball. They're not in there for football. But now you're going into a conference where you've already got two of the top teams in the country that you've got to contend with, not just for recruiting, but you have to play to try just to get to the SEC title game to actually have a shot at the CFP. That's an uphill climb for anybody. And I think Orgeron found that out himself in the last couple of seasons.
Well, Orgeron found it out. Danny Mullen found it out. You can't have an off year. I mean, basically, that's what they're telling you right there. And then you've got Oklahoma's moving in, and Texas.
Right, and you've got Texas moving in, so it's going to be even more crowded.
Yeah, so you've got some serious recruiting issues, but they seem to think that Brian Kelly is their guy. They really put a push in for Lincoln Riley. I think Lincoln Riley was smart to go to SC, and I think that we'll see how leaving nobody at Notre Dame was pushing Kelly out the door.
Right, and he didn't even tell the team in person. He told them
Yeah,
via
that was
text message.
Yeah, the text message. See you guys in the morning. I'll bring bagels, and donuts. Don't worry about that. I'm on my way out. So we don't even know who's going to coach the team. They obviously will be in a bowl game. They could
Right,
be,
for sure.
as you put quite accurately. They could very well still sneak into the playoffs.
And if they do, how disjointed will this team be now, having your coach leave less than a week before you find out what you're going to be doing?
Well, if you look at what happened over 48 hours ago, when Lincoln Riley went to ESC, he took 3 coaches with him. Bob Stoops is actually going to have to hire some temporary coaches.
Maybe Bob Stoops will hire himself.
Yeah, he was. That's not a bad thing. Barry Alvarez. Remember, Barry did that at Wisconsin.
From Wisconsin,
he did it. But the funny thing with Stoops is that he'll bring in some coaches that will help him. Obviously, it's not like he doesn't have the Rolodex of people he could bring in to help him out. So I think he'll be fine. There's a lot of people that want Stoops to be there on a permanent basis, but I don't think that's going to be it. I think if there is a Stoops in Oklahoma, it would be the guy over in Kentucky,
Mark,
brother Mark.
He's done a great job with that team.
He does, and I think, frankly, he's gone as far as he can at Kentucky.
That's true, because you're hitting the same glass ceiling that what we're talking about with Kelly at LSU.
Right. So he's not going to get any better there. So if I'm him, and my brother happens to be the person leading the charge to hire, my resume probably would kind of eke up the list on there for that standpoint.
Well, people in Oklahoma and Norman scream nepotism if that's the case.
Well, they can scream as long as they want to, but they know that they want to win. So
that's true.
At the end of the day, if he wins for them, nobody's going to care. But I think, and the thing is, I think Mark could win at Oklahoma because he knows that whole Oklahoma pattern, right? I mean, they haven't changed coaches since 1999. I mean, yeah, Stoops left, but he literally handpicked Lincoln to take his place.
The other name that I've heard kicked around a lot, and it's ruffled some feathers down here, is they're talking that Brent Venables, the defensive coordinator from Clemson, could also be in the running for the job.
Yeah, he could. And he's stuck around for quite a while at Clemson. I mean, he's been offered jobs all over the place, and he's stayed there, and he makes 7 figures at as an assistant. I don't know. Maybe he does want to take his shot at coaching, and maybe Oklahoma picks up the phone and says, "Yeah, he said no many times, but let's see if he says yes this time."
Hopefully, it'll pan out better for him than it did for Jeff Scott and company. After they left.
Yeah, things happen. Yeah, when you get the coach, you do have to find out. The talent at Clemson does not necessarily translate to the talent wherever else you go.
That's true.
So, all right, my man. Let's go to last night. Okay, just less than 24 hours ago, when we were doing the show, you had some picks that did pretty well. Let's take a revisit to them.
Yeah, we had told you last night it's one of our top 2 team parlays. We told you to take Washington +1 over Seattle. I know people said, "Hey, it's Russell Wilson's birthday, so we can't see him losing." Well, he gifted the football team a win by not being able to move the ball for 3.5 quarters. Seattle had 4 first downs in that game into the 4th quarter. They had 1 in the second half before their final drive. Washington wins outright 17-15, even though they tried to make it interesting by letting Seattle move 97 yards for a potential tying touchdown in the final 2 minutes. Kyle Fuller with an interception on the 2-point conversion after Seattle recovered an onside kick. It was negated because they couldn't line up right. Yet feel bad for the Seahawks, who are now 3-8 and probably out of the playoff race. A lot of talk about Russell Wilson potentially, could be dealt in the offseason. The Giants are supposed to be a strong player for him. I guess that means they're souring on Daniel Jones. Who knows? And we told you to take Wyoming -4.5 on the road over CSU Fullerton. We talked about how the Titans can't play defense, and they don't play good in their own gym even. They lost 79-66, so Wyoming a 13-point winner, covering that one rather easily. And we always tell you, with the shot in the dark at the end of the show, it's like a Chinese menu. You can pick and choose what you want. Had you gone through it, we missed a few, sure. That happens. But you could have gone through and picked a 6-team one out of it that would have hit for you. We told you Iowa would win +2 over Virginia. They won by 1 outright. We told you Oral Roberts -2 over Tulsa in the battle of teams with Golden in their nicknames. The Golden Eagles over the Golden Hurricane, 87-80. We told you Boston College -5.5 over South Florida. The Eagles beat the Bulls 64-49. And in another college game, we said St. Mary's -9 over UC Riverside at home up there in Moraga. And it was the Gales winning 67-50 as the Highlanders really struggled to shoot the ball. Then we threw in, we told you the Kraken -150 over the Sabres on the road. The Kraken had won 3 out of 4. They stopped Florida's 11-game home winning streak over the weekend. They beat the Sabres 7-4, scoring 3 goals in the first period, 2 in the second, 2 in the third to win going away. And we said the Thunder and the Rockets in a battle of 2 teams that don't really score all that well stay under 215. Final score in that game, 102-89 in favor of the Rockets. Obviously, 191 is less than 215.5 in case you weren't a math major.
As I was not. But, I do know that in that South Florida game last night that, you score 49 points, unless you're playing football, you're probably not going to win. Yeah,
we've seen some ugly basketball scores lately, and we'll get to one of those later on in the Shot in the Dark where I went against Boise State. But, there's been some really weird scores in college basketball, teams not getting out of the 40s and 50s. We saw VCU beat Vanderbilt 48-39 in a game in the Memorial Gymnasium there in Nashville. So, there's been some horrible offensive games.
Well, the trend these days is, throwback jerseys, throwback situations like that. Perhaps what we're seeing here in college basketball is throwback scores. Maybe that's
it seems like throwback shooting because everybody's fired up bricks.
Clunk, yes. It's a masonry situation. All right, so now we're going to go to college. We've got a couple of games. And, let's begin with the one that you like right off the bat. Where are we going this time, Christopher?
We're going to head to upstate New York, where the ACC Big Ten Challenge comes to the Carrier Dome. I'm taking the Indiana Hoosiers, giving 2.5 points over the Syracuse Orange. Indiana, they struggled towards the end of the Tom Crean era. They struggled under Archie Miller. Mike Woodson, he's an alumnus. He played in the NBA, coached the Knicks for a while, coached the Hawks. They're off to a 6-0 start under his leadership this year. They're 21st in the nation in scoring defense at 57.2 points a game, and they hold opposing teams to 32.1% from the floor. That leads the nation. On the other side, you've got Syracuse. They're 317th in scoring defense. They're giving up more than 77 points a game. They're 308th in three-point field goal percentage defense. They've lost 3 of their last 4, and in those 3 of those 4 games, they've given up at least 84 points. That includes giving up 100 points at home to Colgate.
Oof.
When you give up 100 points to Colgate, then they followed that up. They lost to VCU in the Bahamas. They beat Arizona State, but it was 92-84, and then they got drubbed by Auburn. But 100 points to Colgate. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't hate me now, folks. The Raiders are a good team in the Patriot League, but it's the Patriot League. Yes, they were in the tournament last year. They don't have Jordan Burns like they had a year ago. This is a Syracuse team that, is perennially on the bubble for the last decade when it comes to tournament time. But you give up a triple-digit score at home to a smaller, I don't even know if you want to call them a mid-major or a small conference team. It doesn't bode well when you're facing an Indiana team that's stifling defensively. Syracuse 2-5 in their last 7 as a home underdog, and 1-4 in their last 5 overall. Take the Hoosiers, give the 2.5 points. They should win this one by 6 to 8 at minimum, just because Syracuse's defense is so porous.
There was a time when Syracuse and Indiana would be a national championship game.
Yep, and we all remember Keith Smart.
That's right. Jimmy
sending Ronnie
Boeheim
Cycli home, and he was. I guess at the end, Ronnie Cycli was just glad to be done, and with Jim Boeheim.
Jimmy Boeheim and the man himself, Bob Knight, used to prowl the sidelines there. Boeheim's still at Syracuse. I think he'll be there until he's 105, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the 2-3 zone, either they don't have the personnel for it, or it's just lost its effectiveness because come out 100 points to Colgate on your own floor.
Right. That's and the Carrier Dome is a tough place to play in basketball because, you don't really have that natural backdrop that you do in most gyms, and it's got a lot of people do not like to play in the Carrier Dome.
Yeah, it's basically
normally the Orange do. So
it's basically like almost like a Final Four type of environment with as big as it is.
Yeah, it definitely, no question about it. All right, so we got another college basketball game coming up tonight.
Yep, and we're going to take you to the Steel City for another ACC Big Ten matchup. The Minnesota Golden Gophers, who basically had to retool their roster in the offseason after Richard Pitino was let go, they're favored by 2.5 over Pitt. Now, Minnesota's 5-0 on the year. Pitt's 2-4. Pitt's 325th in scoring offense at 62.2 points per game. They're 330th in three-point shooting. They're 348th at the free throw line. They're just hemorrhaging points at the stripe. They're facing a Minnesota team that's 43rd in scoring defense, giving up less than 60 points a game, 56th in field goal percentage defense, and they're second in the nation in three-point field goal percentage defense at 21.4%. We just watched Pitt lose by double digits to UMBC over the weekend at home, which hardly inspires confidence in the Panthers. I mean, Pitt is also minus Nike Sabandi, who tore his ACL on the offseason. They're minus Ithiel Horton, who was going to be their leading returning scorer from last season's team after he was arrested earlier in November. His case has been pushed off till at least January, so you probably won't see him at all this year. Pitt 1-5 against the spread in their last 6 at home, 2-6 in their last 8 overall, 1-4-1 in their last 6 after an ATS loss. There's not anything good you can say about Pitt. Jeff Capel has dug himself a massive hole there, and you have to wonder how long it's going to be before that university decides it's time for a change, because the Panthers just have not been all that competitive in the ACC the last few years.
No, that's a good point. Pitt had had a good run in the Big East, and that Pitt West Virginia game, used to, the backyard brawl used to be both in football and basketball used to be entertaining. But you're right, the Panthers, since they have moved to the ACC, have been, middle division, second division. Sometimes they make the playoffs, sometimes not. But at the end of the day, playing against a Minnesota team, back in the day, you would think that would be an easy slam dunk for the Panthers, but not so much anymore. So we covered the hardwood in college. It's time to go to the NHL. And where are we going first today?
We're going to go to the Gateway City,
St. Louis.
Yep, and I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Lightning on the road over the Blues, just because the Blues haven't been good lately. They're 3-5-2 in their last 10. Facing a Tampa Bay team that's 7-2-1 in their last 10 games, and they're kind of mad after coming off that 4-2 loss to Minnesota over the weekend. Tampa Bay 70-19 in their last 89 games when they've been held to 2 goals or less. They're 7-3 in their last 10 against the West. Meanwhile, the Blues are 1-4 in their last 5 against Eastern Conference teams. They're 1-4 in their last 5 against Atlantic Division teams. They're 0-6 when a team comes in scoring 2 goals or less in their last contest. And the Blues are also 0-6 in their last 6 following a win, so they can't put together a win streak to save their lives. Jordan Binnington's had success against Tampa Bay in his career. It doesn't happen tonight. Andrei Vasilevsky turns in another stellar outing, while Steven Stamkos and company put up the goals to give the Lightning the road victory. It's somewhat disheartening to see both Chicago and St. Louis down at the same time. I mean, normally one of them's good, the other one's bad. But they can't even have a rivalry in the St. Louis-Chicago situation anymore because, they're both bad. Yeah, well, I mean, even if you go back to the '80s, back when you had the Norris division, it didn't matter if teams were bad or not. You had Detroit, Chicago, Toronto, and St. Louis all in there, beating the crap out of each other on a nightly basis. It didn't matter how bad the teams were, and then you had Minnesota too. And the Blues aren't terrible. They're playing in a Central Division that's not overly impressive right now. I mean, the Wild, they're up there, Nashville. It's kind of a giant cluster of teams hovering around 500. And you've got, your teams like you said, Chicago struggling, but they've had all kinds of issues off the ice, not to mention, on the ice. And one has to hope, just for the sake of the league, that the Blackhawks turn it around. I'd rather see them turn it around than someone like Montreal, for example. But that's just personal preference. But
it does ring a little hollow with a Maple Leafs jersey behind you. So
that I don't like the Canadians, I think it rings perfectly true.
Oh, okay, as long as we get that straight. All right, so
I mean, is there a more bitter rivalry in sport in the NHL outside of Toronto, Montreal? Probably not.
No, not really. They're pretty intense rivals. We're in the Gateway City. Good place to get barbecue. Time to hit the road. Where are we going this time, boss?
Now we'll go down to the Sunshine State, down in Sunrise, where the Florida Panthers, who have come in off 2 straight losses, are going to host the Capitals. I like Washington in this one, actually, at plus 120. Like we said, Florida's coming off 2 straight losses. They lost last week at Washington 4-3, and then they scored 1 measly goal at home to Seattle. Now, we've talked about Seattle how many times in the last couple of weeks about how we like to give up goals. Florida had scored at least 4 goals in 10 of their 11 home games going into that one, and they scored 1.
Oops.
Meanwhile, Washington 8-1-1 in their last 10. They're 7-0 in their last 7 against Eastern Conference teams. 5-1 in their last 6 overall. Florida's going to be minus Gustav Forsling, Mason Marchand, and probably more importantly, Alexander Barkov, who's out until sometime in December with a knee injury. Sergei Bobrovsky, for as good as he's been, and he's been good this season, but in his career against Washington, he's just 9-13-5 with a 301 goals against and an 899 save percentage in 29 games. Ilya Samsonov, 9-0-1 this year for the Caps. He's really been a very nice revelation for the Blues, the Capitals, as he seems to have relegated Vitek Vanacek to the backup role, and the Capitals are looking good right now. I mean, they're atop the Metropolitan Division. They beat Carolina over the weekend to take over that top spot. I look for them to upend Florida here.
Yeah, it's funny. Alexander Ovechkin in that game took a puck off the face early in the first period, then went on to score a hat trick against Carolina. So,
I mean, Ovechkin is a force to be reckoned with. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he's not showing any signs of slowing down at 35. And he just continues to light the lamp with regularity.
Right. The funny thing was, after the game, they had a shot from inside the locker room when the game was over. They had, a Thanksgiving-type turkey dinner there, and there was Alex with a drumstick the size of something that you would see on the Flintstones, having a, Brontosaurus-sized drumstick, eating it and celebrating the fact that he had scored a hat trick and they had beaten Carolina.
And flipping back, looking at the comments here, flipping back to college basketball for a second. Yeah, I think Marquette should take care of Jacksonville State. I mean, don't sleep on the Gamecocks there. Jacksonville State's a good team in the Ohio Valley Conference, but I don't think they're going to give Marquette too much trouble. Also, Lou, yes, I agree with you. Golden State and Phoenix under 222. I was going to get to that in a little bit. That's going to be a marquee matchup on the NBA hardwood tonight.
No question. All right, well, we're going to leave the Sunshine State.
Nope, we're going to stay right there for a second, Jim.
What's that?
We're going to stay right there in Sunrise.
Oh, okay.
Because I want to look at the total of this game too.
Sure.
They've got it at 6 as the number. I think they're going to go over it. If you look at the numbers, Washington 5th in the league, 3.55 goals a game. You just talked about Ovechkin. Not even a puck to the face can stop him from putting the puck in the net. Florida's 3rd in the league, 3.67 goals a game. They average 4.25 goals a game at home. Washington's gone 4-0-1 with the over in their last 5 against the East. The over is 4-1 in their last 5 against Atlantic Division teams. And in the last 7 meetings between these teams, the overs hit all 7 times. In the last 7 in Florida, it's 5-1-1. We just saw them put 7 goals on the board last week. Why would it be any different tonight?
Hopefully it won't. Hopefully they'll they'll have one of the old Bruce Boudreau 6-5 games when when Spanky was coaching the Capitals back in those days, where they didn't play defense but they scored a lot of goals. So maybe we'll get that back in like I said, when Spanky was coaching the team. So we got one more NHL game to get to. And
we're going to take you to Beantown.
Oh, Boston.
Yep, in Beantown here, it's they're hosting the Red Wings at the old TD Garden. I like the Red Wings with the puck line at +110. Detroit 3-7-1 on the road this season. Boston 7-3 at home. Detroit has, for as decent as they played this season, and they're 4th in the Atlantic Division, actually ahead of Boston, who's 5th. Detroit struggles on the road. Let's be honest. 13-58 in their last 71 on the road. 13-43 in their last 56 against Eastern Conference teams. 12-57 in their last 69 as a road underdog. They're facing a Boston team that's 6-0 in their last 6 against teams with losing records. 5-1 in their last 6 against the East. 5-1 against Atlantic Division teams, and 18-6 in their last 24 at home. One issue for the Bruins, other than Jake DeBrusk asking for a trade, Brad Marchand will serve the first of his 3-game suspension tonight after he was nailed by the Department of Player Safety for slew-footing Oliver Ekman-Larsson of the Canucks in Sunday's 3-2 win. That could affect the Bruins because you have to find somebody to stay on that top line with David Pasternak and Patrice Bergeron. But come on, it's Detroit. They had to struggle to beat the Sabres the other night when the Sabres were playing the second game of a back-to-back, and that was at home. Now they're going on the road. They've had no success there. Boston beat Detroit earlier in November. Look for the Bruins to cover here and get the victory.
Well, it seems these days like the only time that the TD Garden gets sold out for hockey is when the Beanpot comes to the building. So
yeah, that, or if you catch one of the original 6 matchups, because
that's true. Yeah,
a lot of times nobody wants to see the when Ottawa comes to town, or
no, they'll go out and see Toronto or Montreal or Chicago come to town. They'll definitely
or definitely the Rangers.
Well, yeah, the Rangers. There's always that, but not the Islanders, but the Rangers. There you go.
Well, you ever wonder how long the leash is going to be for fans that want to go to the UBS Arena and watch the Islanders with the way they've played? And they've been fortunate to get a couple days off. Well, not fortunate because of the
COVID,
behind it, but
right.
Maybe it'll give them a chance to get some of their guys back, and maybe that'll help them turn things around.
Well, I know I've spoken to a few people who've been out to the building and seen the games out there, and there haven't been many, but they've seen a couple.
I hear they say the food is good.
The food is good. When you lead with that usually doesn't bode well for the team playing there.
This is true.
At least the food is good. So there you go in that regard. All right, time to leave the frozen pond and head to the hardwood. And we got 3 good ones for you tonight. Where do we go first, Christopher?
We're going to go to the Rose City, Jim, and we're going to look at the Portland Trailblazers, who were stomped last night on the road in Utah, which we told you was probably going to happen, considering Portland was 1-9 on the road going into that one. Sure, they're playing the second game of a back-to-back, but they're playing the Pistons. The Pistons, as you know, if you've tuned in, aren't very good. They're minus Kelly Olynyk. They don't have Isaiah Livers. Portland's 9-1 at home this season compared to their now 1-10 road record. Detroit's just 2-8 on the road. They're 29th in the league in scoring offense at 99 points a game. They're last in field goal percentage. They're last in three-point shooting. They're last in field goal percentage defense. So, I mean, hey, they're consistent. They're bad on both ends.
Right.
They're 28th in three-point defense. They're 6-15-1 in their last 22 after an ATS win. 2-5 in their last 7 on the road against teams with a winning record. Portland 4-0-1 in their last 5 as a home favorite. I mean, it's 9.5 points, and yes, I know the Trailblazers are playing the second game of a back-to-back, but you're talking about a Detroit team that is very young. They don't shoot well. They turn the ball over a lot. Damian Lillard has got to be due for some positive regression sooner rather than later. He's had some real struggles in the early going this season. C.J. McCollum, Yusuf Nurkic. Norman Powell's a question mark. He didn't play last night. I'm sure Portland could have used him. But I like the Blazers here. I mean, there's no reason to trust Detroit at this stage. Sure, Detroit's covered some games lately. They covered against the Clippers. They covered against the Lakers. But you can't rely on a team that's averaging less than 100 points a game.
Well, leaving Portland, which also is a good food town, where are we going next on our trip through the NBA tonight?
Well, now we're going to go north of the border as the Memphis Grizzlies, formerly the Vancouver Grizzlies, for those of you that remember that far back, taking on the Raptors in the 6th there. And I'm looking for this one to go over 216. Now, granted, both teams are minus their leading scorers. Ja Morant out with a sprained knee that he suffered last week against Atlanta. OG Anunoby is out for Toronto with a hip injury. But these teams met just last Wednesday. And we saw these teams combined for 239 points with the Raptors with a 126-113 win. Memphis has gone over the total in each of their last 7 games, while Toronto's seen the over go 7-2 in their last 9. Memphis 7-0, seen the over hit, and after giving up 100 points. They're 6-0 after scoring 100 points, the overs hit. And Memphis is last in the league in scoring defense at 115.6 points per game. Like I said, we just saw these teams score 239. 216 seems like a fairly low total for these guys, even with Morant and Anunoby missing. I mean, Memphis hung 128 on Sacramento the other night, despite the fact that Morant didn't play. I know what you're saying. It's Sacramento. Nobody likes Sacramento. And they can't play defense either. But still, you've got to make shots in order to put up that kind of point total. It doesn't matter who you're playing. You can play air and still not score 128 points sometimes.
It happens more often than not in the NBA. And, you know, the Grizzlies, it's funny. They're a very consistently inconsistent team, but they do score points. And that's something that, like you said tonight, it's not the matter of who wins. It's the matter of how many points are scored. And it looks like those two teams easily could hit that 216 number.
Yeah, I mean, Memphis, you know, all of a sudden they decided that, you know, they'd rather try to be like, you know, any team from the Nuggets from the 80s where you try to beat teams 140 to 137. And that only gets you so far.
No. Well, ask Paul Westhead. Go back to the
that's the name I was looking for with Paul Westhead.
You know, go back to Paul and you know, basically he was the guy who you know, lost the Lakers job because Jerry West got a little upset that they couldn't play defense. And decided that maybe, you know, they should hire this guy, you know, Pat Riley to see if he could help them out. And so they stayed in-house, got Pat Riley. The rest is history. But they did play defense on Riles, that's for sure. And we've already talked about what he's done with Eric Spoelstra down in Miami. So
that's true.
2 of those guys.
Of course, they didn't do it yesterday because I didn't realize Nikola Jokic was going to play because he was ruled out originally. They changed it closer to tip-off. And, of course, he had, I think, 19 or some points in the first half, and Miami just looked flummoxed. I guess they weren't expecting him to play either.
No.
So thanks, Heat, for not showing up last night.
Yeah, one of those kind of things. All right, so we're north of the border we've gone, and now where are we headed?
We're going to head to the Big Apple where it's a battle of the boroughs as the Nets take on the Knicks at the Barclays Center. Now, I'm going to go with the Nets minus 6.5. Both these teams have made some rotation moves. Tom Thibodeau yesterday saying that Kemba Walker is out of the rotation going forward, while the Nets have taken Blake Griffin out. Now, Walker has not been the same guy he was when he was in Charlotte, and he didn't look all that great in Boston. But he's been terrible. He's got the worst plus-minus in the league among players that have played at least 400 minutes this season. The Knicks have the best scoring defense in the league when he's off the floor, and they're near the bottom when he's on the floor, so it's probably a smart move. The Knicks also dealing with question marks surrounding R.J. Barrett, Derrick Rose, and Nerlens Noel. Taj Gibson also banged up. The Knicks have lost 5 of their last 9. They've been very inconsistent of late. They're 0-7 against the spread in their last 7 after a straight-up win. They're 0-5 in their last 5 after an ATS win. Brooklyn's 6-1 against the spread in their last 7 after an ATS loss, and 4-1 after a straight-up loss. One key stat here, the Nets are second in the league in field goal percentage defense at 42.6%. The Knicks just 22nd when it comes to shooting the ball. That puts a lot of pressure. I mean, granted, the Knicks are playing some good defensive basketball because that's Tip's style. But when you're shooting that poorly, you're setting yourself up with a very narrow window to work with. And if some of these guys are missing, if you don't see Barrett, if you don't see Rose, it's really going to impact the Knicks.
Well, the other thing, too, to remember with this being played at the Barclays Center is there is that crosstown, rivalry and bragging rights. And the Knicks have not exactly done well at the Barclays Center since that place was built. And part of it is because the Knicks haven't done well anywhere, but on the road. But taking the train over to pardon me, to Brooklyn should not be a problem for the Knicks. But the problem is they have to play the upcoming game against the Nets, and the Nets play well at the Barclays Center.
And yeah, Jared, you're right. Brooklyn's roster isn't all that great, but when you get right down to it, would you rather have Durant, Harden, LaMarcus Aldridge and company, or would you rather be running out Alec Burks, who took over the starting role from Kemba Walker?
I think I would go with the Brooklyn lineup.
I mean, sure, I get Joe Harris is out indefinitely with an ankle injury, but when he's in the mix, I mean, you're talking about a premium three-point shooter. You've still got, guys like Millsap in there that can give you valuable minutes. He's a veteran. You can't overlook these guys. Yeah, they may not be the teams like we've seen in the past where you've got 8 or 9, 10 guys that can score double digits on a given night. But you're also not looking at a team like the Lakers where you've got LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook, and a whole bunch of filler.
Well, it's going to be fun to watch, and I'm sure the people at the Barclays Center are going to enjoy a victory tonight for their Brooklyn Nets. All right, my friend, it comes to that point in time in the show where it's time to go for 2 for the money. And here is your 2 for the money tonight.
Yep, I've got Indiana minus 2.5 over Syracuse. We just talked about it. I mean, how can you go up 100 points to Colgate and think that you can play defense? And I like Memphis and Toronto to go over 216. And the other one I like I said, Tampa Bay over St. Louis on the ice. And in another ACC Big Ten challenge game, I like number 2 Purdue minus 11 over Florida State. The Seminoles, they're 5-1. Leonard Hamilton's a great coach. I'm not going to take anything away from him. But in their one road game this year, they got thumped by Florida, losing by double digits in that one. Purdue's at home at the Mackey Arena, and anybody that's been there knows it's quite a hostile environment for a visiting team to play in. Purdue's got a lot of size, and they've got a lot of options offensively. Look for them to cover.
Yeah, the thing at Mackey is that it's one of those old-style college basketball arenas where the fans are literally on top of the court, basically. There's not a lot of separation like the new arenas where it's all kind of like everything's back. This is the old style up there where the crowd can drive you nuts for 40 minutes.
Yeah, and it's going to make for a long night for Florida State. I mean, you're not looking at the same team you had the last couple of years with so many people moving on to the NBA. Scotty Barnes left after 1 year. He's in Toronto now. And we saw how they struggled down there in Gainesville at the
O'Connell Center.
75-word name arena because it's the Stephen C. O'Connell Center,
right.
Tech Arena.
I just like to call it the O-Dome. Leave it at that.
That works. That's what we're going to call it from now on.
Okay. That's what they call it on
It'll save me about 45 seconds of trying to remember what everything
right, exactly. And trying to get it properly straight. It's like Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. No, excuse me. Steve Spurrier Field at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. By the time you put that on the graphic, you're in the third quarter.
Yeah, it's like in Columbia where it's 4-0 field at Memorial Stadium, something else.
There you go. So
good to see you, Joan. You're not late. You're still on time. The show's not over, and you can watch us anytime anyway. So there's no such thing as late.
No, and we're pretty lax when it comes to attendance. So if you show up, you get counted. All right, we've gone 2 for the money. Let's go for the show. All
right, and we're going to start with, like I said, all the good games in college basketball tonight are the ACC Big Ten Challenge, and we've got number 1 Duke going on the road to Columbus to take on Ohio State. It's only a 2-point line, which is kind of surprising after Duke beat Gonzaga last week. Ohio State's been up and down. We watched them beat Seton Hall, and we watched them, stumble. I'm not overly sold on the Buckeyes. Even at home here, Paolo Banchero, he struggled in the second half against Gonzaga after having a big first half. But, I guess that's an adjustment to the college game. But it's Krzyzewski's swan song, and, Duke seems to be intent on beating people that they may not be expected to beat necessarily. And I like Duke in that one. Then, like I said, Minnesota over Pitt. The Panthers, I don't know what to do with Jeff Capel. I don't know. At least the best thing for him is at least his dad's not calling out stuff in the media saying that the university is not supporting him or anything else. Kind of like, the Browns.
Yeah.
Portland minus 9.5 over the Pistons, and I like the Caps Panthers to go over 6.
So there's your 4, folks. And as Chris likes to say, if we're a Chinese menu situation here, if those 4 don't appeal to you, and something earlier in the show, whether it was college basketball, the NHL, or the NBA, does, then mix and match. Put 4 in there, take some of the ones Chris gave you, and put some others in. So that's that. Now, it's time in the show to go crazy. And let's see what you got on the big board today, big guy.
Yep, we got a variety of stuff on the board here. Like we said, like Jim said, you can mix and match. Like you said, we had 6 of them come up last night that you could have run together and walked away pretty happy with yourself. We've got the Capitals plus 120 over the Panthers on the ice. Like I said, I'm not sold on Florida now after seeing them lose back-to-back games, including losing to Washington last week on the road. I like the Wild with the puck line minus 1.5 over the Coyotes. I got burned by Arizona last night because they went on the road. And even though I said they don't score any goals, well, they didn't. They scored 1. Unfortunately, Winnipeg didn't score any because they forgot to show up. So thanks, Jets. Anyway, it's the second game of a back-to-back. Arizona still, even with that win, is 3-9-1 on the road. Minnesota's rested. They shouldn't have any problem getting some pucks in the net and walking off the ice with a victory there. In a mid-major game, in college hoops, I like Davidson minus 4.5 on the road over Charlotte. The 49ers, I liked them when Mark Price was coaching them. Then they fired him. I'm not overly sold on, I think it's on the way the organization or the program's been since. They've had a lot of shuttling in and out of players. And Davidson is Davidson. They're a good team. They're always in contention in the Atlantic 10. Doesn't matter who they've got out there, it seems. So I like them there. I like Santa Clara minus 12 at home over Hawaii. Hawaii seems to play well at home. They have trouble when they play on the mainland. I don't have any faith in them here. On the NBA, I'm going to take Memphis with the 3.5 points over the Raptors. I'm just not convinced that Toronto is back to where they were a couple years ago. Siakam's still trying to round into form. Goran Dragic is out with a personal issue. Like I said, Anunoby's out. You're putting a lot of pressure on Van Vliet and Gary Trent, who I believe is questionable tonight as well, to try and step up. Golden State Phoenix, marquee matchup of the night. I agree with what Lou said earlier. I think it's going to stay under 222. Both these teams are very good at staying under the total. They play very good defense. Look for it to fall short of that number. Also, Portland and Detroit, I look to fall short of 216. I mean, if you think about it, the way Detroit scores, averaging 99 a game, Portland would have to score around 120 to push it over if Detroit puts up a normal number. And this was the game I was talking about earlier when we were talking about ugly basketball games. I'm going to take St. Louis +3 on the road over Boise State. Boise State, they beat Ole Miss on a neutral floor and then turned around and lost 46-39 to Cal State Bakersfield last week. 39 points in a game where they were favored by 15.5. Now, the Billikens aren't the same without Javante Perkins, but they've had some good success in the early part of the season. I can't trust a team that scored 39 points in 40 minutes. Wake Forest -2 over Northwestern. Steve Forbes doing a good job in the early going with the Demon Deacons. Chris Collins has got his work cut out for him in Northwestern, but at least they're improving. And then the Bruins with the puck line over the Red Wings.
Well, the thing here, we're talking about Charlotte. The last time I can remember Charlotte, Cornbread Maxwell played there, so it's been a while.
There you go.
Since I can remember what's going on. It's going to be a lot of fun tonight. There's a lot of good stuff. It's not often that you get to the point where you say to yourself, I'm interested in staying up late just to see Utah play against Golden State, but that seems to be the case tonight, I'll tell you.
Oh, you mean Phoenix?
Did I say Phoenix? I'm sorry.
Phoenix has won, 16 in a row. They're 17-3. Golden State is 18-2.
Right.
I mean,
at 18-2, you'd have separation, right? At 18-2, you'd think you'd have separation, but no, you look over your shoulder and it's like Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid. Who are those guys?
Yeah, I can only imagine what tickets are going for in that one. I think it's going to be a very competitive game. It's going to come down to which supporting cast steps up the most. I mean, Steph Curry, as great as he is, he's going to have to get support from Jordan Poole, Draymond Green, guys like that. Devin Booker is going to need CP3 to come up with support. DeAndre Ayton is going to have to control the paint, which you would think he would because that's his role on that team.
That's what he's getting paid for.
Right, and it's definitely going to be worth the price of admission. I can only imagine that fans are going to be looking forward to that one for sure.
Absolutely,
but they might not see as many points as they might think with all the talent on these teams. But it's still going to be worth it.
Well, speaking of worth it, stick around because in not too long, at 3 o'clock, you're going to see Back to the Window with Scott and Scott right here on the Whiners and Whiners Sports Betting Network.
And we're happy to tell you that Steen didn't show up at anyone's house. He said his family got him plenty of pies in advance. So in case you were wondering,
where was he?
If you had taken that prop bet, the answer of did Steen show up at anyone's house, the answer was no.
And my understanding is that the other Scott, Rochelle, did not date anyone over the weekend, so your daughters are safe. And so
now, no truth to the rumor that nobody wanted Rochelle. We can't confirm that at this point in time.
Right. Although we'll find out and make sure. But those two guys are coming up next on the Whiners and Whiners Sports Betting Network. And we want you tomorrow at 1:30, whether you're watching us on Twitch or whether you're watching us on Facebook Live or whether you're watching us on YouTube or, on Twitter. Be sure to join us at 1:30 because you're going to want to come back and see how many tickets you got to cash last night from Chris's Parleys. So,
well, Nathan, that doesn't surprise me. Rochelle's always taking a nap. You should see him when we go to meetings and he's laying down on a pillow on his couch.
Well, it's hard to do. I mean, he lives a very active life. He needs to get his rest whenever he can get it. So we don't begrudge Scott a little bit of rest. You
could probably set up a parlay on whether Rochelle was taking a nap, but the yes would be a prohibitive favorite, so you'd probably be better off saving your money.
Yeah, just go the bed line on that one. He'll be in bed at that time. So anyway, I'm Jim Williams for Chris King. We appreciate the fact that you were with us today for Just Parlays. As I said, stay tuned for Scott and Scott Back to the Window, and join us tomorrow when we come back again for Just Parlays. Until then, enjoy the day.